And welcome back into another episode of the Believe in Georgia Tech podcast. We are your co-hosts. That is RJ Schafer. I'm Jackson Caudell, coming to you on Wednesday, September 10th, ahead of what might be the biggest game of the Brent Key era and maybe the biggest Georgia Tech game in a decade. I will let y'all decide that. But first, before we get into the matchup against Clemson, RJ, how you doing?
Feeling good, man. This is an exciting matchup. Getting further into the football season, uh, big national attention game to talk about with Georgia Tech. And we love detailing that, previewing that. So big episode for us today.
Absolutely. And for those of y'all watching on YouTube and have obviously complained about my audio at times, justfully so, like just rightfully so. Look who has a mic now. Look who got into the 21st century this week and climbed out of where I was. We're super excited. Like, this is the best thing that's happened to this podcast in quite a long time. And we're just excited that we can all hear me now, aren't you?
Absolutely.
But yeah, just before we get into everything, guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll love it if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, follow us wherever you get your podcast, leave a review, and let me know how much better my audio is. If it's any better, I'm the most technologically challenged person under 30 years old that you're probably going to meet. So we'll see if everything works out. But all right, I guess let's just dive right into it and kind of set the scene a little bit. So Georgia Tech is 2-0 coming into this game. They beat Colorado on the road 27-20, beat Gardner-Webb 59-12. Obviously, the main storyline with Georgia Tech coming into this game is Haynes King. He did not play against Gardner-Webb with what was called a nagging lower body injury. Look, this is just pure speculation, like I said, on Saturday night after the game. I think he's going to play. I think if the Clemson game and the Gardner-Webb games were swapped, like if Clemson was last week, I think Haynes probably plays. I think it was just the fact, hey, we have the best backup quarterback in the country, and the way Haynes King plays, we really need him next week. He sit there, went through warm-ups and everything. He didn't play. I assume he goes this week. I don't. Brent Key obviously was very, very, very brief yesterday. I think it was under 5 minutes. His press conference might have been like it was definitely the shortest one since I've ever been here. I don't obviously I didn't cover the Paul Johnson or much of the Jeff Collins era, so I don't know if there were any shorter ones, but that was definitely a record yesterday. But I do expect Haynes King to play. I guess any thoughts about that before we get into kind of the matchups and everything?
Not really. I'm, ready to get into the matchups. Hoping Haynes King can play. Probably the most likely scenario, but again, no official word from Brett Key. He said a decision will be made later, and he's been looking good in practice. So that's about all the information we have as of now.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll start off. I want to start off with, to me, there's obviously a lot of intriguing stuff here, but again, let's set the scene with Clemson. They came into the season, the preseason favorite to win the ACC, pretty overwhelmingly. Now, if y'all remember back on our ACC Power Rankings podcast, I was a little bit more skeptical of Clemson, not in the I don't think they're good, but in the should they be starting the season as this much of a favorite and the number 4 team in the country? Look, we're only 2 weeks in, so I'm not going to sit here and take victory laps because Clemson could just win out and win the ACC for all I know. Like they did a similar thing last year. They didn't win out. They ended up going 9-3, beat SMU in the championship game. But I had a few more questions about Clemson than some out there did. And look, their offense was very rough against LSU. Last week against Troy was not very good. They were down 16-0 at halftime. They came back. This would be a very odd feeling of a game if they had lost to Troy, but they ended up winning 27-16. But really, they've played one semi-decent half of offensive football. And I think the thing I'm trying to figure out and the matchup I'm just fascinated with is Georgia Tech's defense versus Clemson's offense. Because I guess I'll kind of pull this up here on our friends over at Game on Paper and just kind of give you like a behind the scenes look and just kind of like how these two teams stack up. Because when you're talking about Dabo Swinney's Clemson teams, do you ever remember seeing that much purple on the left side?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's definitely just shocking to see, especially on offense. Like, I mean, just the net EPA per play, they're 95th in the country. Offensively, they're 99th. Offensive success rate, they're 92nd. I mean, the rushing attack is just was one of my main concerns heading into the season. Look, Clemson's had a long line of elite running backs. You can go back to last year with Phil Maffa, Will Shipley, Travis Etienne is probably the best of them all. Wayne Gallman was really good. Andre Ellington, you could go back even further. This year, at least through 2 games, Clemson just doesn't have it on the ground game. But I think the thing that's probably most surprising, at least to I think a lot of people, is how Cade Clubnik is playing. Um, when Cade Clubnik has had to scale up in games, it has not always gone great. He was not very good against LSU. You go back to last year, he was not very good against Georgia. He wasn't very good against South Carolina. Was pretty bad against Louisville as well. And that was one of my main concerns about Clemson heading into the year is like Cade Klubnik is a good quarterback. He is a very experienced quarterback. Can he continue to elevate his game? And so far this season, he's thrown for 426 yards, 59.7 completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's been sacked 3 times. It hasn't looked crisp, and he hasn't been running the ball very well. Now, Cade Klubnik is not Haynes King when it comes to running the football, but he is a very effective runner, and I do wonder if we see some of that this week. The biggest problem for them, though, has been their offensive line.
Yeah.
It's like pretty disturbing, like how bad it's been. Like, if you look, PFF grades are not the gospel. Y'all know I say that 1,000 times about, various different things. But if you do take a glance at them, it can kind of give you a peek of like how they've been doing. Like their starting left tackle, at least on the depth chart, Tristan Lee, 47.1 grade. Colin Sadler, their starting guard, in 117 snaps this year, 52.7 grade. Their highest graded offensive lineman is right tackle Blake Miller, who's a 67.6, which is not bad. But when that's what you're hanging your hat on, like it just kind of shows that you've been struggling as a whole. The question I have with Georgia Tech's defense against this Clemson offense is Georgia Tech's defense good enough and at the level enough to make Clemson struggle? Because when Cade Klubnik has gone against, I don't want to say pitiful or poor defenses, but when he has gone against the non-ranked teams and things like that, he plays very well. Like go back several games last year, he puts on a show and throws for a lot of yards, whether it's G5 teams, lower level ACC teams, and is trying to figure out where exactly Georgia Tech's defense fits in. Because through 2 games, where would you what's your feeling on how this defense is played through 2 games?
It's kind of hard to judge the defense because obviously I think they found their footing against Gardner Webb, especially the defensive line. It's hard to put a lot of stake into that game, where the pass rush was really good, and that was very reassuring during the game. But you're going up against Clemson again, who doesn't have the best offensive line. But I would venture to say that Clemson's offensive line is probably better than what Gardner Webb is throwing out there. Um, I haven't really seen the defense prove it at the next level against a team like Clemson, even though their offense has struggled at times, even though um, Cade hasn't been the best, and honestly, the offensive line has been, straight up bad for Clemson, especially that left side. And the run game and the pass game has really struggled. But this is kind of the prove it game for the Georgia Tech defense, and I don't feel like I know enough about them yet um, to have a strong feeling on how I feel they're going to play in this game.
Yeah, and that's just why I find it like we're going to find out a lot about both of these units because, like, is
Yeah.
this the get right game for Cade Klubnik and Clemson, or is this Georgia Tech's defense steps up and does enough to limit them? And I think you could see a similar game plan. I want to pull up the Miami box score from last year because I've kind of had this theory all off season that Miami or Georgia Tech is going to play them similarly to how they played against Cam Ward in Miami last year. So let me pull that up real quick, and we can kind of discuss it because Miami had a lot of yards in that game. Like that's So looking at the total yards here, Miami ended up with 436 yards to Georgia Tech's 370. Georgia Tech had no turnovers. They had 5 fewer first downs than Miami. Not many penalties. The key differences here, Georgia Tech 9 of 14 on third down. Miami was 3 of 10, and they were 1 of 4 on fourth down. And Georgia Tech also possessed the ball nearly 10 minutes longer. That is kind of the blueprint I've had in my head, even when I kind of thought Clemson would come into this game as a bigger favorite, and their offense. Look, I haven't been the biggest Clemson believer as far as national title contention, but I didn't expect them to struggle out of the gates quite like this. But the thing is, what I'm trying to figure out is like, okay, was the week 1 game against LSU? I think LSU has a really good defense. There are some people out there that have voted LSU as the number 1 team in the country after they beat Clemson, even over Ohio State or whoever you have there. Like, some people do really believe in LSU. And then they go and struggle against Troy. You have a weird rain delay in that game. It's super long. It's like, I'm not excusing anything, but it's like I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, is this going to be the game where Clemson's offense just starts clicking all of a sudden? The passing attack gets better. Look, we still don't know if Antonio Williams is going to play, the standout Clemson receiver. Didn't play last week. I know earlier in the week, Dabo Swinney said he was day-to-day, I believe. So we'll see if he lines it up and plays. But I think, would you say that this is the blueprint that you would want for Georgia Tech's defense to limit them in the red zone, limit them on third down, limit them on fourth down, and then try to possess the ball as much as possible on offense?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that will be the game plan. I think that's the game plan they have to go with. But especially defensively, I think the game plan has to be load the box and pressure Cade Clubnik at all times. Their rush game has pretty much been dead. Besides, I mean, the second half of that Troy game, they ran for, I believe, less than 30 yards against LSU. They struggled in the first half against Troy, couldn't run the ball. And when Clubnik has been under pressure so far this year, which has been a majority of the downs that he's played, he's really struggled. And I think if you force him to make decisions which could come into error decisions, which turns into interceptions, which turns into turnovers, and then you hold the ball for a long time on offense, stay the team that you are, which is running the ball, running the ball, running the ball, running the ball. I think you offer yourself a huge valley to success because, Georgia Tech, I think Clemson has more noticeable weaknesses on offense than Georgia Tech does. And I think Georgia Tech can pretty easily exploit Clemson's weaknesses. And in comparison to this Miami game, I think Miami's offense from last year is 10 times better than what the Clemson offense is this year. So I think if you stick to that formula, if you pressure Cade Klubnik, and you put an emphasis on third down, I think you're going to find yourself with the lead in this game, and I think you're going to find yourself a lot of success.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And look, you're exactly right. The Miami team last year was just a lot more explosive. I guess my parallel there was just Clemson can be, or I've seen this set of players be explosive. Like Bryant Wesco can be as good as any receiver in the SEC or ACC, excuse me. Look, TJ Moore can be really good. The running game, I do have questions about, and I wonder how much. I think Clemson is going to try to throw in this game, and I say some of that because, again, PFF is not the gospel. It's one of the sayings around here. But you look at some of the grades, especially in Georgia Tech's secondary, and it hasn't been great for players that have played a good bit of snaps. Kelvin Hill, 47 snaps, 51.9 grade. Clayton Powell-Lee, 85 snaps, 53.2 grade. Amari Harvey, 95 snaps, number 1 corner on the team, 54.9 grade. Jai Gilmore, 72 snaps, 56.3. Like, I think you can kind of see where things are formulating, where I think Clemson's going to try to attack him. And I think it's through the air. And it's going to be, all right, how can they disrupt Clubnik? Because when I watch Cade Clubnik, if his first read isn't there and you get pressure on him like quickly, like he bails. Like I don't think he does a good job when pressured, and I know a lot of QBs don't. But my question is like, okay, can Georgia Tech get there? Like I don't have a big enough like sample size in Blake Gideon's defense. Like they had one sack in the Colorado game with Jordan Vandenberg, and then you had what 6 or 7 last week, but it was against an FCS team. As bad as Clemson's offensive line has been, is Georgia Tech's defensive line and front seven good enough to take care of it? I don't know. Like I'm not saying it's not, but it's a very intriguing question, and it's going to have to be. Look, Clemson's going to score some points in this game, but can Georgia Tech force Clubnik into mistakes? Can they get pressure on him consistently, and can they not allow any big plays down the field? Because like I think Clemson's going to try to take the life out of this thing early with some big plays. Like I think that's what they're going to do, and then we'll see what their run game provides. I don't have any. Look, they're 129th in EPA per rush. Like that's just shocking for a team with the talent level of Clemson, and there's just a lot of purple on that offensive sheet. I mean, they're 127th in early downs EPA, third and fourth down success. They're 100th. Like the only green you see here is like starting field position. Like it's pretty interesting. So to kind of wrap up that side of the discussion, I think it's win third down, win fourth down, win in the red zone. Like don't allow touchdowns. Obviously you want to either force a turnover, whether it's turnover on downs or an actual turnover, or you want to limit them to 3. Again, that was the Miami blueprint. And then just trying to figure out a way to disrupt Clubnik, whether it's blitzing, whether it's just getting home with 4. There's just a lot of question marks. I guess so. What are 3 things you think have to happen when Georgia Tech's defense is on the field?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things. One of my things, it'll depend on if Antonio Williams plays in this game or not. That's a big key factor for me in this game. Um, if he plays, the one thing that I have to see is you have to dedicate coverage to him. I mean, he opens up plays for other receivers. I mean, that's why I think Bryant Wesco looks so good at times because, Antonio Williams can take 2, 3 guys with him at a time and Wesco's wide open. And we saw that a lot, with this Clemson offense. So if he plays, my key is make sure you have some sort of dedicated coverage, whatever that may be, because he can truly take over a game. He can take over drives. He can take over quarters. And I think, honestly, over Clubnik, I think he is the best player on that offense. Another thing, kind of just reverberating what you were saying, I think you have to get after Clubnik. I think you have to give him pressure. There's a reason why you see a ton of purple on this graph for Clemson, and that's because the offensive line is the most important part of an offense. And Clemson, even though they return some of their guys from last year, the offensive line just has completely struggled in the run game and in the pass game. Clubnik has been running around. They haven't really found what they need in the rush game, so bring a ton of pressure. And my other thing is just be physical. Now, I'm not saying a Georgia Tech defense would ever not be physical, but this is an offense, especially at wide receiver and especially at tight end. Like, they have athletes. They have guys that can run through your face. They have guys that are super fast. And you got to be physical, and you got to, that's how Troy honestly got to that 16-0 lead, excuse me, because they were super physical with Clemson, and they were not scared of these, athletes. And I think Tech will play with that mentality, but I think that's very important to keep them in this game.
Yep. All right, so let's flip it over to the other side and let's talk about Georgia Tech's offense versus Clemson's defense, because this, I feel, is kind of like your good on good right here. Like, these are the 2 units we probably believe in most on either team. Obviously, we talked a little bit about Haynes King at the beginning. I think his ability to run is just going to be super important. Like, I think Clemson's defense has been pretty good. I think I don't think it's been at the high level elite that we've seen. And look, you're only through 2 games, but I thought they played really well against LSU, because LSU has like some really good offense players. Garrett Nussmeier, like they have a lot of really good skill talent as well, and I thought they did a good job to contain it. My thing is and I said this in the preseason, like Georgia Tech's run game versus Clemson's run defense. Like this is to me, I won't say like I hope nobody takes this out of context. Georgia Tech does not have better players than LSU. I think they have a better running game than LSU. Like I think they have a more complex running game than LSU, and there's a whole lot more you have to account for on every snap when Georgia Tech has the ball. That's what I mean when I say that. And I want to see like the number one thing me and you point out, we talked about it with Colorado. We talked about it pretty much in every matchup last year. How good's your linebacker play? Like, how good is your linebacker play? Because you're gonna there's a lot of eye candy when Georgia Tech goes on offense with the shifts, with the motions, with the formations, with all that kind of stuff. And how good your linebacker play most of the time generally determines like how much you can stop Georgia Tech's offense. And because there's so much you have to account for on every play, whether it's Haynes King, Jamal Haynes, the running game, the quick screens, the deep shots down the field. And can Georgia Tech impose their will, have their identity, and be able to run the ball against this Clemson defense, against the Clemson defense that, coordinated by Tom Allen. Now they made that switch in the offseason. This is his third game. First time, I guess, that I know of that he's going against Buster Faulkner. So I just think that matchup is just fascinating.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it a little bit. I think the Clemson offense versus the Georgia Tech defense is weakness on weakness, and I think the Clemson defense on Georgia Tech offense is big strength on big strength. I obviously think Georgia Tech is one of the top offenses in the ACC, if not the best, and I think you can debate this with Clemson or Miami, but I think Clemson has the most talented defense in the ACC. They have guys everywhere, and that's very worrying. Not that Colorado had a bad defense, but they don't have the level of players that Clemson has. TJ Parker is a national star edge rusher level player. Sammy Brown, Wade Woodis at linebacker have been incredible. So this is by far in any game that they played the best level of players that they are going to see, and they're all on one unit in Clemson.
Yeah, and this is the most NFL players you're going to see on a defense to play Georgia at the end of the season. I would probably lean Miami's defense is a little bit better than Clemson's, but that's just because I've seen Miami's defense go against Notre Dame and do what they did. Their pass rush was really good. But this is just going to be a massive challenge for Georgia Tech's offensive line. And look, they've been excellent at running the football. They've been one of the best running teams in the country so far. I think they probably could have had over 300 yards last week, but there was a little bit more of an emphasis on the passing game, whether it was Philo or Graham Knowles in there, or I guess Graham Knowles for his one throw, which he only graded out at like a 60, by the way. I made a joke on Saturday night that I was anxious to see if he was going to get like a super high PFF grade because of the one play, but turns out he didn't. So again, that just goes to show you PFF grades are not gospel, because Graham Knowles deserved a 100 for that play. But I guess back to the matchups here, if Georgia Tech's running game is slowed, can they make passes when they have to? That's the biggest question I have, is if there's going to be times in this game, even if Georgia Tech is running the ball fairly well, if you get into a 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 8, we haven't seen much from this passing game against quality competition. And that's not to dismiss what Aaron Philo did last week, but it's obviously the opponents are very, very different. In that first game against Colorado, you really didn't have a lot. And we know that they wanted to run the ball. They ran it 47 times. You didn't have any big plays through the air with Eric Rivers. Malik Rutherford got hurt in that game. Bailey Stockton was pretty good, but you just didn't see a lot of explosive plays through the air. And, that's something I want to see in this game. If you get into – because that's how you slow the Georgia Tech offense down, is getting them into obvious passing situations. And look, I'm not saying Haynes King can't throw the ball, but I'm saying he's much better when their offense is dictating what's going on the field. Clemson has enough guys on their defensive side of the ball to dictate what Georgia Tech can do. With Parker, with Woods, with Sammy Brown, with those guys, they have enough to dictate what Georgia Tech is able to do. And look, I think Georgia Tech's offense is gonna play like it normally does. Sometimes you'll see teams talking about, this is a game where we want to possess the ball, do that more. That's just what Georgia Tech does. They love those 7-8 minute drives. And I think you're going to see they're going to try to do that. Like, I think they're going to hold the ball a lot. Like, I think they're going to try to keep it out of Cade Klubnik's hands. And look, I'm really like, this is a big opportunity for the Jamal Haynes Malachi Hosley duo, man.
Yeah.
Like it's a go ahead.
Yeah, and I think, we talk about on every preview podcast, like normally we have a weakness to point out about the opposing defense. The more you dig into this Clemson defense, the more it's hard to find a weakness. I mean, they gave up, an explosive play against Troy. They've given up a couple of explosive plays at a time, but there's not one unit you can pick on, not one way you can, manipulate the defense. So all of your guys, all of your playmakers, Haynes King, Jamal, Hosley, Rivers, everybody in the receiving core, everybody's got to be on their best game because, I mean, it could be anybody's night. And that's the way I see it. Your best guys are, might be covered at times. And a type of game like this against a really, really, really strong defense, that's when you start to see, kind of the unsuspecting guys stand out and make a name for themselves. So everybody's got to be ready for their number to be called. And, this offense has to, be plugging away at all times. And I think they will.
The mute button got me right there. I will say, like, as talented as Clemson's defense has been, and look, they've been pretty good. They haven't, like, you look at some of the numbers and the advanced numbers haven't been just elite. Like, EPA,
Yeah.
rushing allowed, they're not great. Like, available yards percentage, it's not great. The third down success, it's like they're 104th. But again, they are very, very, very talented, and I think they're a little bit better than the numbers may suggest. At least when I've watched them, it feels like it's a little bit better than those numbers might suggest.
Yeah, and I think it's also the talent is also a lot better than they played. Like I do think Clemson is one of the most talented defenses, even if they haven't necessarily put it all together. I think they have the skills literally anywhere you want skills on defense, from the secondary all the way down to the defensive line. Even if they haven't put it all together, there's still reason to be scared, even if the stats don't say you should be.
You know what we haven't mentioned yet?
Hmm.
They can't turn the ball over on the first two drives of the game this time. Like, that's something that has literally been done 2 weeks in a row, coming from a team that really didn't turn the ball. Like, they were one of the best teams in the country at not turning the ball over last year. They did it on their first three drives against Colorado, and they did it on their first two drives against Gardner-Webb. That would spell doom against Clemson. Like, can't do that this week, and I don't anticipate them doing that. Like, I don't think, but you have to take care of the football, and they also have to be more disciplined. And that's an odd thing to say about a Brent Key team, but Georgia Tech, through 2 games, it's a small sample size, but it's 2 games. They're 124th in the country in penalties. It's been an issue through the first few games, and we talked about it a little bit after both the Colorado and the Gardner-Webb games. Like, this is just a little bit uncharacteristic, and I'm not saying like they are an undisciplined team and they've just unraveled or something, but it's just very uncharacteristic of generally who they are. For me, the 3 keys is control the clock and control the line of scrimmage. Like, if you don't do that, I feel it's probably game over. I don't know that they're going to be able to sit back there, drop back, and beat Clemson like that. There's just some teams you're just not going to be able to do that to when you're Georgia Tech, and if they don't control the line of scrimmage and run the ball well, I don't think they have a chance to win this game personally. But I do want to see more explosiveness in the pass game. We haven't really seen that yet, and I'm more saying maybe off play action, that kind of stuff, and then just not turning the ball over, be taking care of it. Like, to me, those are the 3 things. You control the line of scrimmage, control the clock, get explosive plays when you can, and don't commit turnovers and stupid penalties. Like, they're going to be in great shape in this game because literally, again, maybe beating a dead horse here, but just going back to that Miami game, just in terms of what they were able to do on defense and everything. Look, you were able to control the clock. You won the time of possession by 10 minutes. And sometimes that can be a misleading statistic as far as who controls the ball more because you're turning it over. But Georgia Tech didn't turn it over any in that game. And you only had 3 penalties. Like, just playing smart, disciplined football is going to be how Georgia Tech's offense is able to have success in this game.
Yeah, and my 3 keys honestly are pretty similar. One of mine that is the most important is you have to win the turnover battle. Because even last week when Clemson was playing against Troy, Troy honestly it felt like they dominated Clemson in the first half. And then, they go 2 drives in a row with an interception. They kind of fall apart in the second half, and Clemson walks away that game with a win. And, the score doesn't, show how scary of a game that was. So you have to win the turnover battle. You can't play sloppy. You can't play like you started the Gardner-Webb game. You can't play like you started the Colorado game. For all the things that Clemson has been this year, they're still a very talented team, and if you play sloppily, they're going to take advantage of that. Troy, before they played sloppily at the start of that second half, um, they took advantage of that Clemson team pretty well because they weren't playing sloppily. And if Georgia Tech plays that type of game again, it's not going to be such a sweet song. But my 3rd key is you have to win the explosives battle. You have to find a way to limit these Clemson wide receivers. They have talent all over the board, from wide to inside of the slot. I mean, literally any spot where you can have talent, you can have speed, you can have height. They have all of that, but you have to limit the explosives, and you have to find a way to get a couple of yours come your way, whether that is a Jamal Haynes run, a Malachi Hosley run. You got to find a way to get explosives and to limit Clemson's explosives. And I think if you do all 3 of those, meaning limit Clemson explosives, find a couple of explosives, in whatever way Buster Faulkner draws up, I'm okay with throwing everything at the wall in this game, every type of play that you have. This is the game to do it, and winning the turnover battle. I think if you do all 3 of those, you're going to find yourself in a very good spot for a potential upset.
Yeah, this is throw the kitchen sink at it. Like
Absolutely.
this is your everything you got. Like nothing, no stone left unturned in this game. Before we get to game predictions and stuff, I'm usually not. I like to take things one game at a time generally, but I do want to talk a little bit about like what a win would mean here. Like, so obviously, if Georgia Tech does win this game, this would not be Brent Key's first win over a ranked team or a ranked ACC team for that matter. Look, he is 6-1 against ranked ACC opponents. The thing that would make this different, though, is it would legitimize you as an ACC contender and make you one of the favorites because you go back to some of the games that they played. Look, the couple upsets they pulled the upset they pulled last year when you beat Miami, you were already 5-4 and out of the ACC race by that point. When you almost upset Georgia, you were 7-4 and out of any big picture things. Take it back to 2023 when you upset Miami and you upset North Carolina. You were just kind of out of things already. Like, this would set the tone for what could be one of the best Georgia Tech teams we've seen in a long time. And again, I want to clarify this by saying I am in no way saying the season is over or anything like that if they lose. Like, it's the exact opposite. Like, you still have a lot of things in front of you. But look, they haven't beaten Clemson in a long time. We all know that. And outside of the game in 2021, when they almost beat Clemson in Death Valley, most of them haven't been close. I don't foresee a blowout in either direction happening here. But like that's been the thing here is, whether it's Clemson or Georgia, they've been just the 2 biggest rivals for Georgia Tech, and they haven't beaten them in a while. Now, they've played Georgia really tight the past couple of years. Didn't get to play Clemson last year. Like, Clemson's coming in a little bit wounded. They started the season number 4 in the country. They were the overwhelming favorite to win the ACC. Lost to LSU in a really tight game. Look, they had the ball at the end of the game with a chance to tie it or win it. And then they came out and just like they looked awful last week against Troy. You know, you go down 16-0 at halftime. You have that long rain delay. Came out, finished it fine, but it's like you're just really worried about Clemson. And it's like I've seen Dabo backed into a corner over the past couple of years, and they come out and they play strong. Can you be the one that comes out and play strong this time? And look, announce yourself as a contender, because I made this point a couple times, and some of it I think is schedule related, and some of it is I think this is a really good Georgia Tech team. But if you win this game, Miami probably, unless something weird happens against South Florida this weekend, which is possible. South Florida's been the giant killers this year so far. Miami's going to be the ACC favorite. You're probably right behind them. And some of that is, again, the quality of a team you are, but also the schedule in front of you. And look, I'll go through it again. Look, next week you play Temple. Temple's actually been slightly better than what I expected. Like, I was at the bottom of the barrel. Look, they've played UMass and Howard, so I see you smiling and nodding your head over there. So let's calm down a little bit. But like they've looked like they have a pulse, and I didn't know that they'd have that this year. So kudos to them. Wake Forest has looked horrendous through the first couple of weeks. You have a bye week. You know who might have looked worse through the first couple of weeks is Virginia Tech. Like that, it looks like a dead team walking with Brent Pry. It just, the vibes are bad over there right now. I don't know. Then you have Duke next. They just lost to Illinois. They did outgain Illinois, and they had a lot of turnovers in that game. That was a very odd game to watch, and just see the score 45-19, but it didn't feel like a 45-19 game when you're playing it. But Georgia Tech, I think, is better than Duke, but still, like, that's a tough game. Syracuse just had to go into overtime to beat UConn, and I don't think they're very good right now. NC State, the jury's still out on them. They gave up over 500 yards to Virginia and eked out a win because Virginia just fell flat on their face at the end of that game. Boston College lost to Michigan State double overtime. We still don't know a lot about them. Pitt's only played FCS teams so far. We still don't know a lot about them. And then obviously the game against Georgia. You're going to be a favorite in every remaining ACC game. Like, there's no doubt in my mind the way the season has started and played out. If you win this game, you're going to be favored in every remaining game. And look, you never say never, but it's like this is just such a golden opportunity. And if you win this game, you know, you're probably going to be in the top 15, I would imagine, on Sunday. Like you'll be ranked for sure, but you could be like in the top 15. Be your first win over a longtime rival in quite a bit. And it would just be a huge thing for this program. I try not to make one game bigger than it actually is, but like I do think you have to think about what this would mean and what this would represent. And again, Brent Key has beaten other ranked teams before. I do reckon he's beaten teams ranked higher than Clemson. Look, Miami was number 4 when they beat them last year. But you don't have a loss in the column yet. And if you did lose this, you could even afford a mulligan if you had one. Like every team in the country probably is going to play a bad game at some point this year. It's hard to go undefeated. But the pathway to ACC title contention and more is there if you win this game.
Yeah, I think there's two big alleys in where a win for Georgia Tech could be huge. And the one that I always love to talk about because I think Georgia Tech is approaching that area. I think a win against Clemson after the wins that you've had last year, after the big win against Miami, I think a win against Clemson would be the true win that sets you up as, I guess, an ACC powerhouse, a top tier ACC team, a team that's on the level with the Clemsons and on the level with the Miamis. I think Georgia Tech has slowly been creeping up to that level. They've been beating teams of that level. Can't really finish out against the rest of the schedule. But I think if you have another big win like that against, the only ranked team on your schedule as of right now, that makes you look really good and that makes you look like one of the best teams in the conference. But I think in terms of this year, that makes your ACC championship game odds or even winning the ACC championship odds go so much higher because, throughout the rest of your schedule, you don't play Louisville and you don't play Miami and you don't play SMU and some of these other top ACC teams. And, I don't want to say any Power Four conference schedule is easy, but you were definitely held a lighter conference standing than you were last year. And I think if you go out and win this game, you have the tiebreaker against Clemson. Clemson, bear in mind, that has a very hard ACC schedule. So, even if you are tied with them at one win or whatever it may be at the end of the year, you have that tiebreaker. But it might even be hard for them to get to that only one loss in ACC play, just because of how hard that schedule is in the future. Um, but I think setting up that tiebreaker against Clemson is huge. Even if they don't make it, to that discussion at the end of the year. Um, Plus, you set yourself up to uh, go undefeated in conference play, and possibly be undefeated heading into the game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I just think this win would open up a lot of doors because your next three games after this are Temple, Wake Forest, and Virginia Tech, which should be three games where you're favored by at least a touchdown, if not double digits. And I think you really open yourself up to be one of the top teams in the country. We talk about being ranked. You said maybe top 15 if they beat Clemson. If they go out and beat Clemson and then they're a 6-0 team, and you're starting to see yourself in that playoff hunt, I don't see a reason why Georgia Tech couldn't be a top 10 team. I think they're talented enough. I think they have good enough coaching, and I think this season could end very good if you take this Tigers team off the board.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that much better myself. And like you were mentioning, the teams they don't have to play, they don't even have to play Florida State, who's kind of surprised
Yeah.
us the early part of the year. Like, you don't have to play them. Clemson has to play all those teams except Miami in the regular season. They play Florida State, they play SMU, they play Louisville. I don't know that I would throw Duke in that conversation, but they also play Duke. And then obviously they have South Carolina at the end, which is, of course, not an ACC team, but it's a huge opportunity sitting right in front of them, and it's really a chance to take this thing to the next level. I know Brent Key has talked about making the jump. He's had it written on his hat every time I've seen him and talked to him. That this is your chance to make that jump. Like, it's Clemson has been the dominant power in the ACC for a decade. I know that they are not quite what they used to be, but they were still a college football playoff team last year. They have won the majority of the ACC championships in the past decade. Look, you had Pitt in 2021, and then you had Florida State a couple years ago. But Clemson has been like the power in the ACC for most of the decade. So it would just mean a lot, and I guess that's where we should lead it into what happens. So I'll let you go first. I'm gonna toss you this grenade unfairly and let you go first.
Um, as a shocker to nobody, as I've predicted a couple of Georgia Tech upsets in the past. I try not to be a homer, but I do the best I can. I'm gonna go with Tech in this game. I don't see this one being a super high scoring game, um, at least as of right now. We don't know Antonio Williams' status. I'm not sure, what that Clemson offense is going to look like. So I'm going to go with a pretty low scoring game. I'm going to say final score Georgia Tech 18, Clemson 14.
So before the season, I did predict Clemson to win this game. I had Georgia Tech finishing 9-3. I had them losing to Clemson, Georgia, and NC State. Look, and obviously, I always say those things are subject to change because of the data you get and everything. And look, it's just been 2 weeks, and there are some things that generally scare me in this matchup if I'm Georgia Tech. I still have no idea if this defense is any good. And not only that, I don't know if it's even at the level of last year where you were really good at stopping the run. You had some other areas that, were some sore spots, but you were generally a fairly solid defense. I don't know. You've played a team whose offense I don't think is any good in Colorado. I think we've seen that through 2 weeks. They're going to make a QB change, but we'll see. But the Colorado team you played just was not very good on offense. And there were some times I thought Colorado moved the ball on them, especially on the ground in some drives that mattered. I thought that Colorado was able to move the ball on them a little bit. The passing game, the passing defense, I guess, it worries me a little bit, and I think Clemson can exploit that. Like I said, my worry is if Georgia Tech can't get to Clubnik and affect him. Like, is this the Cade Clubnik get right game? Is this where he comes back and throws for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns against the defense? It's been my concern. But heading into this game, I feel more sure of what I know Georgia Tech is and what they can be as far as their identity. Like, I know what Georgia Tech is going to step on the field and do. I don't like you were saying, like I Clemson has the talent to do it, but like, they barely scratched 300 yards against Troy. Like, I look, the LSU game is, LSU's defense is really good. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to struggle to score in LSU, but the one of the things I said about Clemson before the season is like you kind of know what they are in a way. Like they're the players, like Cade Klubnik's been a starter there for multiple years. The receivers are fairly new, I guess, because like Wesco and some of those guys are young. But a lot of these like guys and just generally have a good feeling about. And it's just kind of stayed the same. Like they haven't really taken the next step. And is Georgia Tech perfect on the offensive end? No. Like I think there is a chance Clemson is able to limit their effectiveness in the run game and force them into some uncomfortable third and long situations, which could be problematic. I think I haven't seen enough of Clemson's defense to say that they are definitely just going to totally shut that down. I think that Georgia Tech can have some success on the ground. I think you're going to get your typical Haynes King, just all out effort game. I think Jamal Haynes is going to be the MVP of this game. Look, he's not really had like a major workload so far this season, as just in terms of carries. He's been really explosive. Him and Malachi Hosley both. I think that those are the two players to watch this weekend. I think Jamal Haynes and Malachi Hosley are both going to have a really good game. I think Georgia Tech's going to run for over 200 yards. I agree with you. I think they're going to possess the ball. I think it's going to be low scoring. My confidence level in this is about at a 3. I think Clemson is a very dangerous team. They are backed into a corner here. Like Clemson has to win this game. Like they absolutely have to win this game because if they don't and they start 1-2 after starting the year number 4, look, they were picked by some to be the national champion and to be the number 1 team in the country. And if you start the season 1-2 with games against SMU, Louisville, Florida State, and South Carolina down the stretch, it's going to get uncomfortable over there. And not like a it's going to be just not great. Like this is a program that expects to contend for national championships and ACC championships, and they're going to be feeling the pressure to win this game. Like this is one of those college football games where both teams really, really could use a win here. And look, again, I said it earlier, Georgia Tech season is by no means over if they lose this game. It doesn't change unless they got like lost 50-0 or something. Like they can still go out and compete for a spot in the ACC championship. They can still do those things. But this is just such a perfect opportunity to beat Clemson. It's just, I think there's going to be a lot of fans there. It's supposed to be a whiteout. They've won, I think, 6 in a row at home. They were undefeated there last year. They really made it a point to make it tough to play at Bobby Dodd. I think they get a win. I think it's going to be 23-20. I think, again, Jamal Haynes and Malachi Hosley, I think, are going to be the players to watch in this game and the ones that make a difference. And I think the defensive line is going to come up. The defensive line front seven, I think they're going to find a way to disrupt Clubnik and make him make a couple mistakes. I think you're going to have that, and I think they are going to do it. So I will take Georgia Tech 23-20. It makes me also nervous because generally when they've pulled the upset, I'm usually on the opposite end of it. Like I picked Miami to beat them last year. I picked, when they upset North Carolina a couple years ago, I was on the wrong side of that one too. So maybe I'm the bad luck charm here. But I do think Georgia Tech can win this game. I think they will win this game. I trust them more with their identity and what they're able to do. And just, again, Clemson seems to be in an identity crisis. Do I worry they're going to all of a sudden figure it out on Saturday in Atlanta? Yeah, it very well could happen. Like I said before, Clemson could come out and throw for 300-something yards, look crisp on offense, and it's like, okay, that's the team we thought we'd see before the season. But I have seen nothing. There's been nothing about them this year that makes me think they're going to do that. I think Georgia Tech's good enough to win this game, and I think they will.
Yeah, and I think if before this game you didn't tell me who we were playing and you just showed me raw box score stats of your next opponent against Troy, I would not be worried at all. But knowing who Clemson is, knowing the guys that they have in their roster, knowing who's on their coaching staff, makes this game, a lot more frightening to pick because, like you said, this is as equally of a huge game for Georgia Tech as it is for Clemson. This is a big, prove it game for them. Um, After not looking so good in those past two games, and people questioning, are you really a playoff contender? Like pretty much everybody thought you were in the preseason. So they need to prove it to themselves. They need to prove it to um, everybody else nationally. And, this is a pretty good spot for them against a team that, is receiving votes in the AP poll, a team that a lot of people view at not even necessarily as a dark horse ACC contender anymore, but a team that is viewed now as a true ACC contender. Um, this is a huge spot for Clemson. This is a huge spot for Georgia Tech. And, my two key players for this game, I'm going to go with, just to be different than you, because I was going to say Jamal Haynes too. I'm going to say Haynes King, obviously. He plays best coming off of injury, which is, funny enough. He plays best when he can put the game into his hands, whether that be running the football, doing whatever. He plays best when he knows that he can go win a game on foot. And I'm going to say Kilo Stone. He was pretty good against Gardner Webb. He's a, very talented guy. And I think if he can, get past that offensive line, he can get to Cade Clubnik. I think you could see a sack or two from Stone in this game. And I think his presence will be heavy. So those are my two guys. And I think Georgia Tech will pull it off. But even though they struggled against Troy, even though the game against LSU, the second half wasn't the prettiest, this is still a very, very, very good team.
I expect nothing less than Clemson's best shot.
Yeah.
I expect nothing less than that. And I will also say, I'm glad Georgia Tech and Clemson are playing a high-stakes game again. It's been a little bit, like I said, it's been very lopsided in Clemson's favor. You've only had the one matchup with Brent Key and Dabo. That was a couple of years ago. I actually went back and watched that game. I'll spare everybody the pain of going back and doing that. Georgia Tech goes up 7-0 after Clemson had the weird fake punt at the beginning of the game. Then Clemson rattles off 28 or 35 unanswered points, and it was just very lopsided. Ended up being, I think, 42-21 was the final score over in Clemson. They didn't play last year. But I'm really happy that this is a very meaningful game because, look, these are two great fan bases. I know a lot of Clemson fans. I like a lot of Clemson fans. That's a great fan base. And just to see these two teams on a big stage in a big – because this is going to be the game everybody's watching early in the day. This is going to be the game everybody's tuned into early in the day to see, what happens. So, look, it's going to be a great atmosphere. 12 o'clock ESPN Saturday. Any final thoughts?
I think we touched on it all. Absolutely.
So that's going to wrap it up. We usually try to go as in-depth and long as we can on these previews. This is a big one. Obviously, we went a little longer than usual, so appreciate everybody that stayed tuned in. Thank you guys for all the support you've shown us. We're nearing 1,000 subscribers. Would love it if you could help us get a little bit closer than that. Tell your friends, all the Georgia Tech fans supporting us. Tell your friends about us. We love all the support we're getting. Just like the video, follow us wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a review over there. Y'all's reviews help us improve the show because, again, I've for a long time seen the comments about some of my audio challenges. So it helps us to improve the show and generally make it. We want to make this the best podcast for Georgia Tech fans and make it the highest quality. So we really appreciate it. All the support you guys have given us and letting us know that. But we will be back with an instant reaction as we always do on Saturday after the game, whether it's good or bad, maybe in between somehow. But we will see you guys then.